Surround yourself with greatness. The people who you surround yourself with in your life are important. If you surround yourself with people who build you up, who make you grow, who challenge you to be better, you're going to become great.
Have you ever felt like there is just this hidden potential that you have? Like there's something that you could do that nobody else can do.
So you want to do things because it's the right thing to do, because you were meant to do it, because you feel it.
That you could conquer the world and you could feel amazing, right? And normally you're being told this by someone who's paid to make you feel this way with speeches.
If you wait for the conditions to be perfect to make your dream a reality, then you're going to be sitting on your dream for the rest of your life. If you want something, you go get it.
This is normally called motivation.
Ignore the non-believers. If you have an idea, you're going to have people in your life who are doubters, who don't believe in what you're doing, who will tell you to do the safe thing, the smart thing.
Unfortunately, motivation is bullshit, and here's why. So something that's actually bugged me for a long time is that people have put so much stock in motivation, and while it's great for a little while, the problem with motivation is that it really doesn't last that long. It's a positive, uplifting feeling that basically fills you for a short period of time, and then slowly it diminishes and you have no real drive. And that kills me because a lot of times those projects that you start and then never finish could have been awesome, crazy, completely groundbreaking projects. But the problem is that a lot of people leave it when they have the motivation run out. And that's the problem. A lot of the times it's not about the motivation, but rather the habits that you build. Now, the idea of motivation makes sense from a common sense angle. It motivates you to work, it motivates you to get interested in whatever project that you're trying to tackle or you want to have a renewed vigor towards. And it makes sense from a common sense angle, but it's got some interesting implications from a psychological perspective. Now, the reason I say this is because when it comes to a human's ability to stick with something, it's basically like making a New Year's resolution, in that it's not going to always work, and you have to understand that having that motivation in the moment doesn't necessarily translate to a long period of consistent growth. A lot of the times what you need to do with motivation is actually use it as a framework, not as your be-all, end-all, this is the plan that's going to work forever because I know it will because it's me and I have this motivation in the moment. Because more likely than not, that motivation is going to run out, and anything that you perceive to be disinteresting or something you don't want to do will essentially lose all interest for you, and you'll never get past that. And the problem is, if you don't build effective habits, then you're not actually going to do anything. You're going to stagnate, and if it's a project that you need consistent care and attentiveness towards, that project is more than likely going to die, and that bothers me. So let me share with you some simple ideas for how you actually can get further in life with something that's not actually motivation, but probably sounds motivational. And that is basically build your damn habits. Because you can use your short burst of positive motivation as a catalyst for building certain habits, because once you have a week or two worth of habits built up, it's a lot easier to actually keep them. Now, that said, you have to keep going with them even when the motivation has started to drop, because as humanity is known, they will drop something, but they'll pick it right back up when they decide to get a side burst of motivational thought, and they'll have renewed vigor for the project. But you have to keep up that consistent feel of habit. You have to build up that habitual nature to keep going anyway, so that you can actually stumble upon this sort of inspiration that you are looking for, because it's not going to happen immediately, and sometimes it might not even happen at all. But if you don't try and you don't build necessary habits around what you're trying to accomplish, then you'll never get done what you want to, because the way that a human mind works from a psychological perspective is that anything that isn't essentially ground in or programmed almost into your behavior and even conditioned in some instances, it won't stick. It's like that really old experiment that was brought up by Pavlov, which is actually where Pavlov conditioning actually comes from. Is Pavlov basically, he had a buzzer on one door and, or no, sorry, it was a bell, and sometimes it would give a treat and sometimes it would not. And when it didn't, it would be a painful buzzing noise. And eventually the dog learned not to hit the bell, because even if there was a treat there, because it would end up getting hurt. And that is basically conditioning. A behavior that you build up so that even when you're not even thinking about it, you're subconsciously doing it. You have to have something hardwired in so that you can effectively execute, which is that's a buzzword, execute, that a lot of motivational gurus use. And basically what it means is to actually get things done effectively, to execute a plan that you've made, and to work around any plans where what you're executing on kind of goes off the rails or fucks up. Actually, Captain Cold said it really well when he said, make the plan, execute the plan, expect the plan to go off the rails, throw away the plan. And that is basically how that works. But more in depth, motivation is total bullshit. It's not what works. You can use it as a basic framework to build something that actually does work, but if you rely on motivation, you're not going to get anywhere, and that is hugely problematic. A lot of this building habits, the way that you build those habits is inspiration or motivation towards actually getting it done. And you can do that if you choose. You don't actually have to. This is like an added step central to the motivation theme that we're talking about today, is you can go to a motivational speaker or get motivated by something, doesn't matter what it is, but if you have that motivation, then instead of going and setting this crazy, insane, super high goal, that's what a lot of people end up doing, is set really small goals and then build upon them, and build upon them in a way that's habitual. So, for example, if you have this attitude of always getting up in the morning really early and getting all your morning routine done, that your morning routine is a habit. So think of a lot of what you're doing for work or for whatever your passion happens to be as a routine. For me, a great example is YouTube. I have to have a routine of getting one video at least out every week. And I started out with 3, and that ended up being way too much of a workload because of all the other things I'm doing in my rest of my daily life. And it ended up where I couldn't do that. So I had to reassess my statements because that was way too high of a goal for me to set, given the time and what I was dealing with. So to more realistically set your goals so that you can set a habit like putting out a weekly video, and do it realistically, even when there are things that come into play that might affect your ability to do it. I've started posting videos on Friday now because it gives me the whole week in between, more effectively for me to plan my videos around, because a lot of things happen on the weekend and I don't have necessarily the ability to structure things properly when I want to, and it's frustrating, so this is how I get around it. That said, guys, that's just my thoughts why motivation is kind of bullshit. It's not the worst thing ever, but you really can't focus on using motivation and motivational speeches and a lot of that stuff as your grounding basis for what you do or your passion or how you want to feel, because the problem is they're very expensive to go to a lot of motivational speakers. If you kind of buy into that, it's really expensive to do that. Or if you're on motivational YouTube videos or videos in general or people who inspire you, that's fine, you can do that. But the problem is you have to set your habits or you're not going to get anywhere. So don't worry about the motivation, worry about the habits. That's basically what I'm trying to get across here, guys. And hopefully I've ingrained it in your head because I've said habits like 13 times throughout the video, and I keep trashing the idea of motivation because, yeah, you're not always going to have a motivation or a want to do something, because generally we build up a disinterest in being bored, and when we do something repetitively or we do something that might have been interesting at the start but slowly wasn't as interesting as we had hoped, then we lose our interest and our motivation to do it. So that's what I'm trying to get across, is don't let the lack of motivation over time affect your habits and your ability to actually perform and output what you're looking for. That's what a lot of high-end guys who are in the business of entertainment, for example, Casey Neistat, Philip DeFranco, Gary Vaynerchuk, they all have a habitual setup to release things on a certain timeline, and they have their lives kind of structured around it so that they can actually meet these goals and build things up properly to effectively reach those goals that they set for themselves. And that is really the whole point. They can be motivation guys, they can talk whatever they want, but these are the these are the underlying principles that they're applying to their lives. It's not this whole idea of get motivated, get pumped, get hyped, because that only lasts so long. It's not about that. Anyway, with that said, guys, thank you so much for watching. My name is Splice Knight, and I will talk to you guys next time. Splice out.